data point to think about in the enterprise and commercial space. What about small businesses? And I actually did a lot of research and homework on this weekend. So let me see if actually Michael will get this. So on planet Earth, every second, there are 4 babies born. Every second on planet Earth. How many mobile devices do you think are sold? Michael? 12? Not even close. Any other guesses?
Per second.
Per second. Per second on planet Earth, there are 40 mobile devices that are sold. Think of that. The rapid pace at which this device is connecting the human beings is unbelievable. We have an opportunity to help small businesses figure out what their mobility strategies should be to take advantage of this trend. So, we gave you a lot of data points between Michael and myself and talked about the impact all of this happened. So the key question in front of us is, how do we differentiate ourselves? How do we differentiate ourselves in delivering value to our customers? And it's my belief that we will do that by focusing on 3 principles. Firstly, taking an architectural approach. And why is an architectural approach important? Right? And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's the key to differentiation. The second is to leverage a partner ecosystem because it needs global reach and scale that no single company by themselves can have. So we're really depending on you to deliver that differentiation for all of us. And the third is working together. And this applies both to technology partners, channel partners, resellers. We can work together to create new applications and services. Michael talked about actually the application development framework being different. But the challenge is, a lot of the enterprise applications exist already today, and they're written in Java and .NET ecosystem. So we have to figure out how we move those to these virtualized platforms while creating new applications with Ruby and Spring and other kinds of frameworks that are going to be out there. So that's really the opportunity that we have. So we've said and used the word architecture a lot. I'm sure at this point you're thinking to yourself, what is an architecture, Padma? What exactly is a technology architecture? So I have a very simple mind. I like to simplify things so I can process them in my brain. For me, a technology architecture is simply a framework that gives us guidelines and considerations for system design, on how you're going to design systems and what those system requirements should be. Now, a differentiated technology architecture does that with certain objectives in mind. So when we look at our approach to technology architectures, we take into account 5 key objectives. The first objective is to enable flexibility for our customers. How many of you work with customers that tell you we need to have flexibility when we're building a system? I hear that all the time. System flexibility is extremely important. So that's a key objective when we think about architectures and how we are developing architectures, and I'll show you in a minute how we do that. The second key objective that we have is to reduce the cost of maintenance and support. Right? Oftentimes we meet with CIOs and other customers that tell me we have to reduce our cost, at the same time we have to innovate. How do you do that? You can do that only by having the right architectural solution that allows you to lower the cost of maintenance. You can have a commodity product. It may be low cost to begin with, but if the cost of maintenance and support and the scalability is really high, then you've sort of lost the purpose of what you were looking for to begin with. The third objective we look for when we design architectures and we approach architectures is to make sure it's an evolutionary approach. There are a lot of changes going on, but there is a pragmatic reality that people have already made the investments they've made. They don't want us to show up with a new shiny object that says, throw away everything you've got and buy this new shiny object. So we have to sell the value proposition and how they can evolve to the future that we've described and the future that they see happening. And lastly, future-proofing the investment, right? We need to build in capability that allows our customers to bring in security, mobility, policy, all of these into the capabilities that they are looking for. And the fifth objective, probably the most important objective, and this is where we differentiate ourselves from our competitors, our architectures depend on and require an ecosystem of partners to leverage the capability that we have. And that is very different approach versus a vertical stack type of architecture design that Michael talked about. So those are the 5 objectives that we keep in mind when we look at an architecture. Now let me show you a model of how a CIO thinks about the architecture. And it's a busy slide, so don't try to read everything on this slide. I'll just walk you through some of the key elements of it. Yesterday, Keith in his presentation showed you top 10 priorities for a CIO. I think it came from Gartner, Keith. I'm going by memory here, but I think if I remember correctly, the 10 were cloud, virtualization, mobile devices, it had enterprise applications, IT management, business intelligence, Web 2.0, collaboration, infrastructure, networking, data, voice, and video. So those were the 10. You can check me, I may have mixed 1 or 2 up, but those 10, if you look at it, are somewhere on this chart. So if an enterprise CIO or a commercial organization CIO or a service provider CIO looks at it, they typically look at this architecture as components of value that come together. Cisco has differentiation in many parts of this architecture. So everything that you're seeing in blue is where we believe we have differentiation. Everything you see in blue is not necessarily only Cisco created. In many areas like management and other pieces, we actually have key partnerships in place, and that's an important message that I want to leave you with. Now, I talked earlier about how we partition the architecture, right? I said we partition the architecture so that there is flexibility for our customers. How do we do that? At a macro level, this is how we do it. So when we talk about borderless network architecture, the focus of the borderless network architecture in the way it partitions the overall architecture for a CIO, the focus is to connect any device to any application that has been authenticated, verified in a secure way from any location across any network. So that's the focus of the borderless network architecture. The data center architecture, when we look at, is a slightly different partition. And it focuses on enabling organizations with agility, efficiency, and reaching the business transformation that they are looking for. The collaboration architecture sort of sits at the higher level and focuses on creating that new future workspace that I talked about. So you can see from this picture how these architectures connect to each other and why it's important for us to really have this partitioned approach to architecture. For example, some of our customers may have pieces of the collaboration architecture from another vendor, but they may want to use Cisco's data center architecture, and we'll enable that interoperability and that flexibility to happen. However, when we look at applications that we're building at the collaboration level, they obviously will be optimized to work better with Cisco Borderless Network and data center. So I hope this kind of helps us see how the architectures come together and how they connect with each other. Now let me go into a little bit more detail on what we mean by borderless network architecture and where we see our differentiation. So there are essentially 5 pillars where we feel there is value, much more value in the future that we can get from the borderless network architecture. And that is in enabling mobility, enabling security, enabling energy management, application performance, as applications get created in a new way that Michael talked about using new frameworks. We want to have the infrastructure that actually knows how to deal with those applications and deliver them quicker, and that's what application performance does. And MediaNet is an integral part of the borderless network architecture because we believe video is going to be the killer app in the future, and we're innovating in the network to provide that capability. So those are the 5 differentiating key factors at the network services level in the borderless network. At the core, of course, this is the core portfolio for Cisco. We're innovating and continuing to innovate every day across our switching platforms, routing platforms, and wireless platforms, bringing them together through unified access, where wired, wireless, and VPN comes together, and then core fabric that extends between campus and data center and so forth. So this is the borderless network architecture, and I wanted to highlight the key differentiation points on this architecture. Now, some of our competitors think of infrastructure as being simply commodity products, right? And this is a choice you have to make. A commodity product serves a purpose for today, but it doesn't allow our customers to scale for the future. Think of it this way. We talked about consumerization of IT. Michael spent a lot of time talking about this. Absolutely true. The consumer industry is actually driving the enterprise to change and shift gears, right? How many of you believe a CIO today doesn't need to worry about all kinds of devices coming into the enterprise, whether it's iPad or smartphones or some new kind of devices or CS? How many of you believe you have customers that don't worry about that? Nobody, right? And so if you have that type of an environment where you're dealing with multiplicity of devices, you need to have a switching and routing platform that prepares you to have access to network visibility and provide security in a different way. And that is exactly what we're doing, building that kind of capability architecturally into the Catalyst 3750X platform and the 4500 platform. And on the high-end enterprise routing side, the ASR 1000, for example, serves as a services gateway that allows you to have high availability access into the cloud services. Cloud is a reality, it's here, but you need to have a gateway that allows you to have access when you bring things back into the branch or into the campus that we're talking about. That's what the ASR 1000 does. And Rob will spend more time on these products, so don't miss his presentation tomorrow. You'll hear some exciting news from us around these platforms. So that's the borderless network architecture. Now, what impact does it have for partners and customers? I think the best way to probably describe the impact is actually to walk you through a real-life example. So the example I chose to talk about for Borderless Network is a customer that we have, Morrison Projects, who's faced with having to deploy a network instantaneously. Remember, I started talking about that's the expectation that we have these days. So they worked with Cisco's premier partner, Converge One, and